Hey there, it's Steve from Serious Keto, and this is part 2 of my transformation story. In this video, I'm going to talk a bit about my history with food and alcohol and diets, mostly failed diets, and eventually we're going to get pretty much up to the point where I had my epiphany that I talked about in the first video, which I'll link to up here. Before we start, a quick disclaimer. I am not a healthcare professional, physical or mental health. Anything that I say in this and subsequent videos are just me relating my experiences to you and sharing some of my opinions, which may or may not be correct. Also, I'm well aware that diet and health are very personal topics to people that they feel very strongly about. And there can be differences of opinion. That's totally cool, so long as we stay civil about it. So please, if you disagree with people in the comments section, whether that's other YouTube viewers or with me, let's just keep it civil. The mother of my grandson, Jaden, you've probably seen her in some of my other videos, is in school right now to be a dietitian. And that means we don't exactly agree on some things related to keto, but we have very interesting conversations as it relates to food and nutrition. And a couple of months ago, she told me that she believed that people who are overweight, and especially people who are obese, that generally stems from some sort of emotional trauma. And I didn't agree with that. I felt that if you're overweight or you're obese, it's a sign of weakness. It's some character flaw. And after a period of reflecting on this, I realized I was wrong. I think that a lot of bad eating habits are triggered by events or reinforced by events in our life. I believe that if we can identify that event or that trigger or that pattern that reinforced our bad habits with regards to, food or alcohol or drugs or whatever it is, that's the first step towards correcting our behavior and starting to get healthy. So I decided I was gonna start to dig back deep into some memories and figure out what it was that drove me to be overweight or obese most of my adult life. My very first memory is of food. I was probably 3, I'm guessing, and my dad was making me breakfast. It's one of actually the very few happy memories I have of my father. But he was making me just toast, I think Wonder Bread, with a mixture of Jif peanut butter and honey. He would mix the two in a bowl into a spread and then spread it on the toast for me. I just thought this was the most delicious thing in the world. And it wound up being the first recipe that I learned. Just mix peanut butter and honey and put it on toast. And I think maybe that was the event that first led me to enjoy cooking, the experimenting, mixing 2 ingredients and coming up with something that tastes better than the sum of the parts. So that was one of the positive food things in my life. Subsequent memories, not so good around the dinner table. My dad was an angry and violent man pretty much every moment he was awake. And at the dinner table, the rules were quite strict. And one of the rules was you finish everything that's on your plate. That some nights was not that hard. On pizza night, that was pretty easy. But my dad was not good at the grill, and our steaks were typically very overdone and kind of hard to choke down. Additionally, I was not a big fan of cooked carrots, which oftentimes accompanied the steak. And that was very difficult for me to sort of choke down. But if I didn't, if I made a face, even if I put up any resistance, if I said I'm full, I would get hit. And I got hit hard enough to see stars a number of times. And that will correct a behavior. I learned that you clean your plate. You eat every last bite. That is a behavior that stuck with me throughout my life. You finish what's on your plate. Nothing goes to waste. That meant that I wasn't having an internal trigger that tells me, oh, you're done eating. You're satisfied or you're full. I ate until the plate told me I was done eating. I began to associate being done eating with being stuffed. So I didn't stop when I'm satisfied. I didn't stop when I was full. I stopped when I just couldn't take it anymore. To me, that was the indication that I was done eating. Like I said, that behavior continued through adulthood. Now, I wouldn't hit my children, but if they didn't finish eating everything that was on their plate, I would just say, oh, give that to me and I'll eat that. So I wasn't just cleaning my plate as a parent, I was cleaning my sons' and daughters' plates as well. I was, probably taking in, I don't even know how many calories, way more than I should have, just because I felt I was doing the right thing by finishing that food. I think the next sort of emotional event that dictated my eating habits throughout life was a desire to please my dad. I wasn't athletic as a child. I was the last kid always picked for kickball or in gym. And I wasn't an especially good student. And I think my dad was kind of disappointed in me for both of those things. But my dad himself, he was a heavy man and he ate a lot, and I thought maybe I can emulate him and eat a lot also, and that will somehow manifest itself in him being proud of me. So I got to a point, probably by age 12, where I could match him 1-to-1 on certain meal nights. If it was taco night and he had 7 tacos, I'd have 7 tacos. If it was grilled cheese night and he had 4 grilled cheese sandwiches, I'd have 4 grilled cheese sandwiches. I recognized that what I was looking for was his approval, that he would see me as a man, I guess, because I could eat like a man. And by age 12, I was starting to get a little bit chunky. In gym class, it was not uncommon for me to get mocked for the little set of man boobs I was starting to grow. Then also, when I was 12, my parents divorced, and my mom, whom I lived with, she had to work some odd hours so that she could get paid more, and as a result, we quit eating together as a family for a large part. Basically, our meal strategy was called Fend for Yourself. We literally called it that. It's Fend for Yourself. All of us, me, my mom, my sister, we all ate independently and we all made our own food. And when you're 12, 13, 14 years old, that generally means you're eating convenience food, prepackaged food. We had a freezer full of Schwann's frozen food items, burritos and things like that, corn dogs. So I largely lived on junk food. Also at the time, I developed a love for Mountain Dew and would drink 4 to 6 cans of that per day. Fortunately, puberty hit, my metabolism started kicking in, I started being able to lean out without really changing my diet significantly, and wound up heading off to college at 140 pounds. In college, the mixture of all-you-can-eat buffet dorm food plus beer had me put on about 30 pounds in the first semester. So, I don't know, freshman 30, are you supposed to do that all in one semester? I did. Also in college, I developed a skill at binge drinking. By the summer after my senior year, my best friend Bill and I, we would split a case of beer before we went out to the bars. Well, it was Miller Lite, so it's kind of like beer. We'll call it beer. That should give you an idea of just the amount of alcohol I was taking in at that time. And that's just, nothing but calories. So I'm sure as I'm describing all of this, the keto folks are listening and thinking, oh my God, this is the keto antichrist here. But that's what I went through. And that behavior sort of continued. So I had the drinking, I had this sort of almost competitive eating attitude where between the clean your plate and the can I eat as much as my dad, I was consuming a lot of food in any given sitting. I would go to Taco Bell and buy the family meal pack and eat that myself. In 1996, when I was getting ready to get married to my wife, I was probably in the 190, upper 180s sort of range, and my goal was just to get under 180 pounds for our wedding. And I couldn't get there. I think I was still probably in the mid 180s when we got married. Here's a little side-by-side of our wedding picture, and then we tried to recreate that same pose on our 23rd wedding anniversary, which was back in October of this year. At age 30, I really started my cycle of yo-yo weight loss and weight gain due to diets. The first thing I tried out was Atkins. And Atkins initially seems just awesome. I was eating bacon cheeseburgers without the bun and with a fried egg on top and slathered with mayo every single meal, which is awesome for a couple of days. And then the cravings start kicking in for the things that you can't have. To me, that was really the breads, the crackers, the tortillas, all the things made from grain. Low carb 20 years ago was not nearly the same creature that it is today. We have so many more options today. We can make stuff that looks and feels and tastes close enough to bread and crackers and tortillas and cake and cupcakes and things that we would never have been able to have 20 plus years ago when doing low carb. So now is such a great time to be keto or low carb or paleo. But back in 1998, it was not nearly as easy. It was dirty keto, but I pushed through and I lost a fair amount of weight. I got down to 155, which was the lowest I had been since college. My weight stayed probably in the 160 to 170 range, for the better part of a couple of years. And then it started to ramp up. And I kept sort of changing where the bar was that was going to be the trigger to diet. If I hit 170, yeah, that'll be the sign that I need to diet. If I hit 180, just so long as I don't go over 180, it's all good. But I kept kind of letting that bar move. And repeatedly, I would do sort of the standard, call it the Jillian Michaels approach to weight loss, portion control, doing some cardio. It wasn't all that effective for me. And it didn't feel fun. I wasn't enjoying food. And then I would go and I would binge. That was my reaction to disciplining myself for a while and not eating. Then I would swing way over and just have to binge and eat a bunch and eat really poorly and treat myself very poorly from a dietary standpoint. So then in 2011, I'm sure up over 200 pounds and decided, okay, 200 pounds, that's a big number. I'm going to have to make a change. And I did the HCG diet. And that is very restrictive in terms of calories and what you can eat. And it was not fun at all. And I was also then, giving myself injections of HCG subcutaneously into my abdomen every day. But I lost about 30 pounds. in a very short period of time, and then proceeded to put it back on, to the point that by 2014, I was once again pushing 220 pounds. And at that point, I saw the documentary Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead by Joe Cross. So I went on a 30-day juice fast. And not fun. It's, again, as you think about what we know in terms of keto, this notion of pumping all of these high glycemic fruits and vegetables into your system via liquid, so you're getting them, very quickly, that's probably not the right answer, at least, for those of us that are in a keto mindset. And I lost some weight, not nearly as much as the HCG diet. Even when I ended, I look back at the pictures now and I think, okay, I'm still kind of chunky. But I think at that point, getting down under 190 pounds felt good to me again. I had so set the bar out of whack that seemed like a major victory. Of course, I put the weight back on, and then some. This was the common theme. Every time I would diet, I would get a fairly radical transformation, and then within a matter of months, the weight had come back, because the habits that I had instilled in myself over my entire life took over. And it's strange because there was a time when 200 pounds was the number that I refused to go over. And eventually it got to the number that I wished I could get under, to the point that by Thanksgiving of 2018, I was 230 pounds. I was in the condition that I described in the first part of this series. I knew it was time for a change, and I decided that I wasn't going to do something especially radical. I was just going to go back to the portion control and do an hour of cardio every day. And over the course of 2 months, I lost 12 pounds. That's, not a huge deal. I'd gone from 230 down to 218 over the course of 2 months. But during that time, I read the book Presto by Penn Jillette, and that changed everything. In the next episode, I'll talk about how a book by an atheist describing his journey to go vegan inspired me, a pretty spiritual person, to go keto. In between now and then, what I would encourage you to do if you're trying to make a change in your life the way I made a change in my life is take some time to do some honest reflection about whether or not there was an event or a series of events or some sort of trigger that has led you to eat the way you eat. And don't expect it to be a fun experience. For me, it's been very hard to think about my dad just in general, but about how both my fear of him and my desire to please him created a lifetime pattern of bad eating. And I think there's probably a couple of other triggers if I think about it. I know that I'm a boredom eater and drinker as well. If I'm staying busy, I don't have any thoughts about food or alcohol. But when I'm bored, when I'm inactive, that seems to trigger me. It's just something I do. So if you find yourself just walking to the kitchen for no good reason and looking in the fridge, maybe that's a trigger that you're a boredom eater. I think also, if I were being diagnosed by a Freudian psychologist, he or she would probably say there's something sexual about my eating, the amount that I would choose to eat and the pleasure that I derive from eating. That maybe as pubescent and prepubescent boy who was in charge of creating his own food and feeding himself, that in a way maybe there's some parallel. Now I'm just going to stop right there. That's getting weird. See, this reflection stuff can be kind of tough. So with that, I'll just say, see you next week. Keep up the good fight. Thanks for watching.